Hello here and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Guys, this is kind of our final true summer show as far as we'll be entering football mode. Next week we'll be in Indianapolis Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So here's our plan for our loyal listeners as well. We're going to preview Big Ten Media Days and probably drop the Husker Online Show next week a little bit early. And then Sip and I will get back Friday, and we'll drop headlines Friday. So that is the plan, how we're going to kind of attack next week instead of trying to figure out how to do the show in Indy on Thursday or Wednesday with so many moving parts going on. But, guys, this is it. I mean, we've kind of made it to this point, and I'm excited. I'm excited for Indy. There's a lot of
Are you really
intrigue
excited for Indy?
Well,
I am.
Are you?
I am. Probably more so than I have been for a media day in a while, just because I'm intrigued to see how Matt Rule shines in that setting. We know how good he is podium.
Like Frost.
I want to see, yes, just like Scott Frost. He might have an opening statement. We'll see. But I want to see what the rest of the conference's response is, because obviously we know Nebraska fans and media alike were pretty impressed with what they've heard from Matt Rule so far. And now the rest of the conference is going to be able to see that in person. I'm very curious to see what the reaction is across the league to the full Matt Rule podium experience.
You know what I'm excited about, Steve Sipple?
What's that?
I'm excited to see you at El Toro Mexican restaurant.
That place is getting
and Robin.
We should be getting paid for as much
for
as
the
plug in that
second
place.
time. And here we go. There's where it all happened last year. That was
look at that.
That was our first kind of official meal. But Megan
do that. How did Megan?
We're not even getting paid by these guys. We're just we had so much fun there last year watching Sipple drink $20 margaritas
with mezcal,
plural.
Can you find the one, Megan, of the towers of margaritas?
I'm not drinking a tower. I don't do that. You know that, Sean.
They have they do these multi-tiered towers there. So we've downgraded. Rob and I before you Sipple, we used to go to St. Elmo's Steakhouse.
That sounds pretty good.
And then you showed up.
There's the tower.
Bring everybody
tower
down a notch.
Okay, look at this tower.
Tell me you don't want to get that.
Tell me you don't want to see Greg Peterson.
It's got sparklers on it.
Tell me you don't want to see Greg Peterson tear into the green margarita in that tower. That's our video producer that travels. But anyway, we're gonna have a lot of fun in Indianapolis.
Hey, just a second now. The mezcal's what costs money, right?
The tequila.
The tequila.
The top shelf.
It was delicious, though.
Presidential margarita.
For people that don't know, the mezcal.
Look at that. Look at these margaritas.
The mezcal gives it a smoky taste, and
which
it's
is
really
nice.
good.
It balances with the sweet.
Yeah,
very well.
Yeah, I'm not big, by the way, on sweet margaritas. I like the smoke.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Well, guys, another headline this week. Sorry for our non-paid endorsement of El Toro Mexican restaurant in downtown Indy. We're going to make that place like a hot spot by the end of this.
I think it's already pretty hot.
No, I think it
needs
right.
our help.
Yeah. If Nebraska ever goes to Indy for a Big Ten championship, that place will be flooded.
We might do the show from there. If they let us. Like, we don't need you here.
A couple towers, do a
bad
show.
For business. This guy's bad for business. Get him out of here. But headlines this week too. Nebraska football announced the Hall of Fame class, and it is interesting to see some of these names because it really kind of makes you feel like we're getting old. That Taylor Martinez is now 10 years removed as a Husker, and he is now in the Hall of Fame class. Tony Dumas in the Hall of Fame class. Sam Cook, former punter. Kyle Vanden Bosch, defensive end, in the Hall of Fame class from 2006. Spencer Long also reaching his 10-year anniversary point, eligible for the Hall. Then Troy Dumas and David Clark. And the criteria, just so you guys understand, it used to be you had to be an All-American or a first-team All-Conference member to be in the Hall of Fame. Since the Big Ten has expanded and it's a lot harder to make first-team, Nebraska, you can be a second-team all Big Ten selection. Now, with that said, Taylor Martinez was a first-team All Big Ten selection, and I do think a lot of people forget that he took Nebraska to 2 conference title games and had the records for several years, was a Heisman contender at one point.
I think he wins it. If he doesn't get hurt that season against Missouri.
What season?
His freshman or
redshirt freshman season?
Redshirt freshman.
The final year of the Big 12 conference.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah.
11.
11?
Oh, 10. You're right. 10.
10.
You're right. 10.
Because they joined in 11.
Yeah,
I mean, just think back to that Kansas State game on a Thursday night in Manhattan.
Oh.
You've seen a lot more Nebraska football than I have.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember a more dynamic individual performance than that? I'm not talking about like overall production. I'm talking about just explosive plays where the other team looked like they were not even playing the same level of football.
You're right. That run, the run he had
Plural
when they were
runs.
up, I think 14-3, Nebraska.
Mhm.
But he had when Nebraska was up 14-3 and he sprinted away from Kansas State. I watched that video this morning and it gave me the chills. That was
incredible.
remarkable.
I remember that moment. Remember David Ubben? I don't know what he's doing
I do.
now, but he was the Big 12 writer for ESPN.com at the time. I was sitting next to him in the press box, and he turned the corner, and I remember him just saying, "Whoa!" And this is a guy that covers national football, the whole Big 12, and like he was like, that put Taylor Martinez in Nebraska on the national radar. That game.
It was a Thursday night game. Right?
Thursday night game.
Pre-Martinez getting his foot stepped on, I believe in the Missouri game.
Yep.
Okay.
In 2010, the game where Roy Halou had the record for most yards in a game for a running back in Nebraska, rushing yards. Martinez was unbelievable. I mean, you think about the Washington game.
Yes.
That
80-yard run against Washington.
At Washington.
So the second half, they come out. I think Washington's like, we're going to make all these adjustments. First play, it was
down
like,
the sideline.
It looked like the guys were running in sand. I mean, he ran past the Michigan
straight
State
line speed.
But, you know, and then even in the Big Ten, he gave Mark D'Antonio and that great Michigan State defense so many problems.
Yeah, he did. I mean, certainly worthy of a Hall of Fame induction. Yeah, he was a game changer when he was right, and he was pretty good when he wasn't right. You know, he didn't throw the ball very well. He had he looked awkward throwing it. What I remember about him was he was quiet at the podium. You know, he was kind of awkward at the podium, but man, at the line of scrimmage, he wasn't awkward. That dude had a growl. I mean, he was a good leader. I mean, Taylor was a great leader.
Then you had in his
on
own
the
way.
field. I mean, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, really, Sipple? I mean, he wasn't at the podium. The podium's the podium. I mean, when he was on the field, I think he was pretty good.
Spencer Long, too, another great one. Two walk-ons, two in-state walk-ons. Spencer Long, Sam Cook. Sam Cook from Seward, Spencer Long from Elkhorn High. Two walk-ons. They get drafted. There's been 25 walk-ons at Nebraska drafted in the history of the walk-on program.
That's pretty good.
Those are two of the more recent. Andy Janovich is the last walk-on that was drafted. But, you know, Spencer Long was an All-American until he got hurt. He got hurt at Purdue.
God dang, that's right.
Purdue.
Yeah.
On that grass that hurt a lot of Husker players.
Dangerous grass in the country.
DeMornay, Pearsonell.
I think DeMornay hit a sprinkler head, right?
In the back of the end zone.
Yeah, that was a sprinkler head.
And then who was the defensive back that got hurt during warm-ups? Blew his knee out.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I remember that. That was like this last year's game or
was it COVID?
Yeah, I think it was the COVID year.
It was COVID.
I mean, and you guys they had to like truck him out of there.
Right.
Yeah, it was
that Miles. Was that Miles?
No. Anyway.
Yeah. Hey, Long was a road grader. He was. I mean, you didn't have to be a football expert to watch a game and see number 61 moving people. You could just say, "Wow, 61 moves people." He moved people. That was back when the line moved people.
And he was 250, 260 in high school.
Yeah.
And they developed him.
Then he got. Well, look at him. He was mammoth.
But those are the kind of guys Nebraska has. I mean, the walk-on program to uncover that kind of player, the 250, 260 pound guy.
Get a scholarship guy like that would be great.
Right. I mean, they've missed on a lot of guys. Like, I mean, and Jeff Jamrog deserves a lot of credit for Spencer Long. He recruited him in that walk-on class to Nebraska, and his brother as well, Jake Long.
Jake Long, pretty good
tight end, played.
As far as Sam Cook goes, averaged 46.51 yards per punt in 2005. Sean, 46.5. Okay. I mean, that was his average in 2005. That doesn't take much coaching. If you got a guy like that, there's a lot of worries that sort of go by the wayside.
What I remember about Sam too is at the end of his career, I mean, he was like a grown-up. He had 2 kids and a wife.
He did.
And
he had at least one kid for sure.
Maybe the two boys.
Okay.
And so we're on the bowl trip in Michigan, the game, the Alamo Bowl. And I just remember I was walking across the street. He's holding his kids with his, I mean, he was just really a mature college football player.
Oh, yeah. He had a house in Seward. I mean, before the draft, I went and did an interview with them, and they had, it was like a little family. It was the week of the draft, and I went to interview him. And yeah, he just said, "Yeah, just come to my house." And it was they had a little place in Seward.
And that maturity and that discipline, I mean, that's why he kicked so long in the NFL. I mean, you just
Well, then he revolutionized the game, the position. He really did revolutionize the position with the array of punts that he could do.
Yeah, it wasn't just his leg strength;
No.
it was his accuracy with the ball to be able to pin it in the corner,
100,
and just place it inside the 10. I mean, like you don't kick that long in the NFL. You don't punt that long in the NFL without being exceptionally good at that part of it. Like everybody's got a big leg, but can you put the ball where it's supposed to go? Sam Cooke did that as well as anyone in recent memory.
I think he developed that kind of that Australian style too. He could do it. He could do a lot of different things with the ball.
Kyle Vanden Bosch too. 06 was his final year. So he's been eligible for a while. And I think people misunderstand, Steve, what the Hall of Fame is. It's not like the NFL where you've got to get in. You just have to be 10 years past your career. And I think Nebraska tries to put together a well-rounded class of old and new. And, you know, it's not like the NFL Hall of Fame where, you know, if you don't make it the first year eligible, it's a slight.
Right. I think that's what some people were saying with Vanden Bosch, that it took too long for him to get in. I don't know.
It's not like that.
But I'll tell you one thing about Vanden Bosch. He had 26 quarterback hurries as a senior. He had 26
He was a monster.
Quarterback hurries as a senior 1 year. That's it. Look at the stats now. There's a lot of guys going through here that don't get 26 in 3 years. He got him 1 year.
He always struck me as a guy that didn't get the credit he deserved. You know, for one, he was following legends.
Well, think of the guys. When you think, Robin, of the best rush-ins in Nebraska history, you start thinking of Wistrom, right?
Right.
Tomich, Peter.
Rucker, Tomich.
Yeah.
Well, not Peter. Peter didn't play on the edge. Then you kind of get down. Then Vanden Bosch too.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, just the timing of which he played, the bar was so high that really no matter what he did, he wasn't going to get the same type of credit. And then even in the NFL, like I think people look at they think about his NFL career and, you know, they know he played, but you go back, he played for a long time.
12 years.
And he was effective.
He played 12 years in the NFL.
He was a legitimate starter in the NFL for a better part of a decade.
Yeah.
Well, and John Gruden, I don't know where I read this, but he would air Vanden Bosch's film to his team. And he never coached Vanden Bosch. He goes, I just want you fellas to watch this.
He'd show the middle of the season stuff. This isn't the start of the season. This is the middle of the season. And this is how he's playing.
And he said, this guy plays harder than any player in the NFL.
That's how you do it.
And that's a testament to Nebraska and the program they had here and the way that they developed that work ethic, and it carried over. I mean, Sam Cooke, Spencer, I mean, all these guys are very successful. I think Taylor Martinez is in real estate. I'll be really curious I would assume Taylor comes back.
Oh, that'd be great if he does.
I hope he comes back. It'd be great to see Taylor Martinez. I bet he has not been back though since his final moment in that stadium. He strikes me as one of those guys.
He was something else. And Dumas, no, I didn't cover Dumas, but he was 91 to 94, and he parlayed a huge senior year. Now I can remember it, even though I wasn't covering it. He had a huge senior year, and then I covered him when he was with the arena team in Lincoln, and he was one of the most vicious hitters I've ever seen. He was a vicious hitter. Great. I mean,
Lincoln Lightning or Lincoln Capitals?
It was one. Sean, that's a good question. I think it was.
The Haymakers.
I think it was Capitals.
Was it?
Because there was a time when I was a freelancer for the Journal-Star that Sip just decided he had better things to do, and so they gave me the Lincoln Capitals beat. So I finished the rest of the season.
I remember like the
unforgettable
Lightning,
experience.
Damon Benning played for the Lightning.
Damon was good.
Yeah.
Josh Lutke.
You know what Damon was really good at? He was a return man. He was a very good return man in that league.
But the beginning of those indoor leagues in the early 2000s, when there was like that former Husker 90s cachet.
Wasn't Matt Turman on? Was he the quarterback of that team?
Oh, don't do that to him.
Josh Lutke was the quarterback of Lightning.
He was, Sean. Yeah, that's an incredible poll.
Well, I mean, he's the Creighton Prep head back. He's a really notable person.
He was their starting quarterback for the Capitals.
Yes.
Maybe the Lightning.
He played for UNO. He was the Lightning.
Ty Good played. Remember Ty Good?
Ty Good played, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's Southeast Notre Dame.
They played in Pershing, which is no law.
I saw them lose a game when a game-winning field goal hit the scoreboard. Like, you know, they had the hang down score. So they lost. It was going to go into
Jerry's world.
Pershing at the
Not
end
really.
Pershing saw some rough days at the end of that place. It was just hanging on.
It hung on for probably a little too long.
It saw some rough days. It did.
It held on to that Rib Fest out there for a while. Rib Fest at Pershing was awesome back in the day.
The poll of the show so far is you remember Josh Lutke as the Lincoln Indoor Arena quarterback.
Well, his brother Jonas is one of my buddies, and I know John. I mean,
and you know what? Luke was an incredibly good quote.
Oh, he's competitive.
Robin, he was my go-to. God, he was great.
He never played high school basketball at Creighton Prep, and he's one of the best high school basketball coaches in the state.
Josh Luke.
Yeah, think about that.
We're off.
All right, we are gonna go
so far off
break.
track. It's almost
when we come back, Nebraska added an offensive lineman commit this week. We'll tell you more about that and the shape of this offensive line class. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Wash. We're in July because we're talking like Lincoln Lightning, Lincoln Capital football, and how Steve Sipple played a hand in getting a coach fired even
easy
at that level.
Yeah. I mean, back in the – you want me to go there? Jose Jefferson criticized the team ownership. And we wrote about it extensively.
It's top fold.
That was good May content.
It was.
In the Lincoln Journal Star
Sean,
back then.
You have an incredible memory. He does. May and June, Sean.
That carried.
July, I was off.
Well, let's talk football recruiting
let's get
on
back
that
into
point.
it.
Huskers add their 24th verbal commitment this week. Offensive lineman Preston Talmoa comes in as an offensive lineman. He's the 4th O-lineman now in the class. Second highest ranked guy Nebraska's added. You look at this O-line class, though, it's starting to really shape up here. You have Talmoa. You obviously have Gibson Pyle, who's come on. And then the two guys from camp, Landon Davison and Jake Peters. So that they've got 4. I think my question right now is there isn't like a defined tackle body. There's guys that could play tackle.
Talmoa can play it.
And he's 6'3.5". I'd be curious what Nebraska has, Matt, if our height is accurate.
I noticed Brian Munson had him as an offensive tackle in his story. I watched his film, and he played tackle. He plays tackle on his high school team. What I noticed is I thought about something that when we were covering camp last summer, I was watching Raiola talk to the guys, and one of the things he said really struck me. He was saying, and he was very forceful about, we take the fight to them. We throw the first punch. That's what Raiola told his guys. We throw the first punch. Well, if you watch this guy, he throws the first punch. Talmoa is really aggressive. I talked to Dominic about him. Dominic Raiola knows all about him. And he said, yeah, this is the kind of kids that Donovan's got to keep getting. Guys, throw the first punch.
This is a big win for Donovan Raiola.
It is.
It really is. He's gotten some guys here, but I think Ben Scott would be the one in the transfer portal where you're like, yep, he got him here. Yeah. But this is one where you can't say, oh, he got helped by this coach, or, it was a Texas kid that, the other coaches helped in Texas with him. This was his guy through his relationships in Hawaii. Yeah.
I know how we are in the world, and I know how we are in the media. We're very impatient, but the offensive line now should begin to take on Donovan's personality and really show his teachings. Just now, in a sense, it's even a little early to judge him. It's still a little early because he hasn't really gotten his own guys in here, right? I think he's done a good job of kind of converting the holdovers, the guys that he inherited. But it's just now that we're seeing the type of recruit that he wants. And these guys are fighters. If you look at these guys he's recruited, they're all kind of gritty fighters. And that's kind of Donovan's personality. That was certainly his brother's personality.
Seems like a different body type too, or maybe they're not necessarily as caught up in the size and the height where those measurables aren't as much of a priority as the things you mentioned with the toughness and the physicality and bringing the fight.
Yeah, bringing the fight is a big thing.
I think it's almost safe to say Nebraska got almost too carried away with emphasizing height on O-line recruiting to the point where it was like they're getting like 7-footers. It was like got to a point where the football team was taller than the basketball team at Nebraska.
Yeah, you kind of understand it. I don't want to be too critical of it because in the Big Ten, you see it every weekend. You see just mammoth.
You got to have athletes first.
You do, but you see mammoth offensive linemen throughout the Big Ten. So I get it. I get the mentality.
It goes back though to what we were talking about Spencer Long and the that's the kind of guy you want
Yeah.
to build and project.
Yeah.
Sam Sledge, I look at him. That's the kind of guy like 260, 270 that you can put the right kind of weight on. And I felt like in the previous regime, their plan was we're going to find these 6'8", 6'9", 6'7" guys, and we're going to let strength and conditioning and nutrition just pump these guys up, and we're just going to create just giants. And they created giants, but they didn't move very well.
Yep.
That's the thing.
Couldn't stay in front of anybody.
Yeah, even Charles Thompson. I mean, I was on a radio interview with Charles Thompson, Casey's dad, and he didn't say much at all about Nebraska, but he did kind of say, let one thing slip. He said, well, I mean, the one thing about the offensive line is they didn't move their feet very well. And they didn't. I mean, that's true.
Well, I mean, and the metrics don't lie. They are, out of all Power 5 teams the last 2 years, Nebraska ranks dead last on Pro Football Focus for pass blocking on the overall grade.
That's telling.
They've had statistically the worst tackle play in Power 5 football in terms of hurries and, QB hits, those types of metrics.
We talked about it a lot.
I mean, we
Donovan doesn't. You saw what Donovan.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
he doesn't like it. In Belton, Texas, he made it pretty clear to me he didn't like our criticism.
And was that all their fault? I mean, did Whipple help those guys out? I think
he didn't.
And that's when you're giving up on the run. I mean, the minute Frost was fired, like any commitment to the run just kind of left the building. I mean, they ran it against Indiana in that game, but they almost wore out Anthony Grant in that game. He wasn't the same the rest of the year.
No,
Mickey wanted to run it. Remember the press conferences? But Mickey didn't have the power really to tell Whipple, this is what we're doing.
Whipple was doing his thing.
Yeah.
He didn't care what anybody else thought.
Whipple Whipple coached a game from a wheelchair, called plays in a wheelchair after he got I mean, he was going to call plays in Nebraska his way, come hell or high water.
Who's the coach that coached the first few plays of that drive?
Steve Cooper, now the offensive coordinator of Maine, and they
actually look pretty good.
I mean, and I can tell you this, like he was transitioning them back with Logan to like what they had been doing with Frost's offense, which worked. I mean, they knew how to run plays and get yards under Scott Frost. That was like not the problem. Obviously, there were so many other things why it didn't work here. But Whipple's offense was more, hey, throw it deep to Trey Palmer,
and sometimes it did work. It's like Whipple to defend him.
It worked against Iowa.
Yeah.
And
if I was Johnny Cochran, I'd go right to the Iowa game.
It dang near worked against Purdue. I mean, that if they would have won that Purdue game,
right, and they should.
They should have.
Well,
kind of should have. Yeah.
Purdue had to go for a crazy fourth down.
They could not get a stop.
If Purdue doesn't get that fourth down late, then they give Nebraska the ball back. Nebraska wins the game.
Yeah, they had Maccabee going, and you have when you
Trey
got
Palmer
O'Connell,
had like one of the best receiving games in program history, and they lost.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell was pretty good in that game.
He was.
Remember when we were up there? I mean, we're up in the press box. He's making freaky throws.
And the fact that Maccabee kid, they were down to like their 4th-string running back, and he just comes in and
he went for like 200.
He's not their 4th-string running back.
They could not tackle him.
He's not their 4th-string.
Look at Whipple. There's the whip.
He about got 1,000. Here's a stat for you, Rob. Last time Purdue's had a 1,000-yard rusher.
I already said this
Yeah.
to you, so I can't give it away.
Shoot.
You nailed it. Sean nailed it.
I'm trying to think. Who's the big dude?
Allstott?
No. All right. I give who?
Just 2008. They haven't had a 1,000
Nebraska big.
They haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher for 15 years.
Who was it?
I don't know who it was.
Okay.
Maccabee had almost 1,000 last year. Wow. He almost got 1,000. He'll get 1,000 this year. That guy's tough. He's a tough runner.
All right. When we come back, we are going to preview. We've talked last week, quarterback, running back, receivers. Today, we're going to do O-line and tight end as we get you ready for the start of fall camp. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, getting you ready now for the start of fall camp. If you can believe it, the Huskers will report to the Selleck dorms on July 30th, which is a Sunday. That's also the same day as Fan Photo Day, which is indoors this year. They're going to do that inside the Hawks. And then they'll open camp July 31st, Monday. Do you have any inkling on what it's going to look like for the media, Sipple?
Availability?
Yes.
For August? Just August?
Yeah.
No. I wish
Still
I did.
to be determined.
I think it'll be pretty good, though. I think the availability will be
It's
good.
usually like 3 to 4 days a week with 3 photo days, maybe.
3 photo days, a couple lake days for me in there. Yeah, but anyway, no, we'll get. Come on, I mean, we've gotten good access with.
Oh
Lou,
yeah,
and I imagine it'll continue.
Yeah, I'm sure. And there's the perfect balance of you don't want to be too much access.
Right.
There was a time where we'd go over there every day in August,
twice a day, sometimes twice a day, which was ridiculous.
Yes, and August was harder than like the season.
Yeah,
because you'd have to come up with things, and you didn't get to watch a lot of stuff. But Rule won't. He has said that we won't get to watch like scrimmages, and his reasoning was like, he doesn't want the players to feel like they're being written about like a game in practice.
Puts pressure on them.
Because if a guy has a bad scrimmage,
puts pressure on him.
Sipple writes a huge column questioning the player.
Is he the guy?
That was a rationale that I'd never heard before.
It makes sense though.
Yeah. I'd never heard a coach at Nebraska say that the concern is not what you guys see and that you put out there for opponents. It's the pressure it puts on our individuals because of the way the world is now.
Well, in the Pro Football Focus grades, he has said too, like
messed with NFL players, messed with NFL
Just the social media era too.
Yeah.
Like if people are filming practice and a guy drops a ball, it's going to go viral and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden they have their mentions blowing up about how bad they are. And it's a head game for sure.
NFL players would look at their Pro Football Focus and it would give them anxiety. They'd look at their PFF grade and it caused anxiety.
It's their job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Feeding families.
And that's I'm sure ownership and general managers, they don't watch like the nitty gritty of the film like the coaches might, but they look at those grades.
Yeah.
When they're making personnel and roster decisions.
Absolutely.
But all right, I want to talk tight end first. We did our projected fall camp depth chart, tight end / fullback. Tight end, I think we all agree Thomas Fidone is probably the guy with Nate Borkature. The wild card remains Arik Gilbert and his waiver, and we'll probably get a good answer from Matt Rule. And we talked to Matt Rule Sipple about this in Texas. And it's not like Nebraska's concerned. It's just a process that they've got to wait through the NCAA.
Well, I think the important thing is, and we said it on a previous show, it bears repeating. They didn't file the waiver. Remember what Matt Rule told us on, I'm going to say, Sean, it was June 8th. Is that about when we were out there? On June 8th, he said we had only filed the waiver about 2 weeks ago, so 2 weeks prior to June 8th. It wasn't like they filed a waiver in February. No, they didn't file the waiver till late May. So there's going to have to be some time passed before they're going to get an answer. And the other thing that's important to note is that's not just like a waiver you scribble out on a piece of paper and send to the NCAA. It's a very detailed,
a lot of depth to it.
A lot of depth. You have to, it takes a lot of thought, and you got to get a lot of facts. And I imagine with Arik Gilbert, it was fairly complex. Mm-hmm. So that's the deal. Sean, you're saying you think we'll find out in Indy?
Well, we'll get an update where it's at, and I'm not
got to get it updated. Camp starts here.
I'm expecting he'll get it, and it might be a deal where he practices in August, and they don't know yet for sure, but they assume he's going to get it, and then they find out like the week before the first game. It could be something like that.
Yep.
But what are you?
Here's a thought. You didn't see much of Fidone. They didn't throw to Fidone much in the spring game. You think that was by design? We don't need to show this kid. He caught one pass for 4 yards in the spring game. My thought was they don't. Why throw to him a bunch? Why have 5 catches for 95 yards in the spring game and get everybody in the world's attention?
Yeah, because the one wild card you have right now is the unknown. If you give PJ Fleck and company some film of how they're going to utilize one of your best offensive weapons, you're doing yourself a disservice. So you can do all those things in the closed fall spring scrimmages, which are obviously the more important practices than the spring game. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they dialed it back with him.
They're protecting him though, too.
Protecting him too in terms of injury.
He hadn't made it through a spring at Nebraska. This will be the first fall camp he's ever participated in as a full go.
See, I just wonder what that. I'm really intrigued by what that might look like. That might be the kind of player that I don't know. I don't want to go too far down that road, but Fidone himself has said what I think I can be a first round pick. You know,
Yeah.
I can be an all Big Ten tight end.
The talent is there, but more importantly, the work ethic is there and the determination is there,
Yeah,
which is why he immediately emerged as one of the captains of their off-season workout programs, which weren't even just workouts, but it was like the community service, like leadership. He was thrust into that role from the get-go and embraced it head on.
Well, I told you what Niles Paul said when they were at the Warren Academy working out. He saw Thomas and didn't know who he was. Niles Paul, former Husker, former NFL tight end from Omaha. He said, he goes, who is that guy? The NFL, he looks like he's an NFL guy back here working out. He goes, it reminds me of George Kittle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of guy you're looking at.
I mean,
now, is there a wild card in here? I mean, are we counting Janiron Bonner as a guy that can make an impact at
Jake Applegate?
What about Bonner?
Jake Applegate is a tight end, and he's been on the top 10% as much as any player.
Redshirt freshman
this week, or this summer. I think that's a name that maybe could slide up there. Janiron Bonner, yeah, it's a matter of like how they utilize him.
Yeah.
Like, what is this fullback role?
Right.
I mean, we all kind of fantasize about what we think and want this fullback role to be. But what is it truly going to be?
Right. That's what I wonder.
Yeah, he still considers himself a tight end.
Right.
After the spring game, they were talking about a fullback. He's like, no, I'm a tight end.
Right.
I'll
He's
line
listed.
up at fullback, but I'll play tight end. I'll split out wide. I'll play the slot. I'll play on the line. I'll play in the backfield. So one comparison that maybe we'll see how it translates, but that maybe you could make is how Northwestern, at least used to, use that super back role.
Yeah.
Remember like Dan Vitale?
Yes,
like that type of guy.
So
They lined him up everywhere.
And he was a bear.
He was.
Vitaly was a pain in the you know what.
Yes. So maybe like ceiling, that's the kind of picture Nebraska could get out of him, but we just don't know until we see it.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too far. I mean, I think Goodwin flashed, John. Goodwin flashed in the spring game a little bit. Lincoln High.
Lincoln High?
Yeah. Rob,
Lynx.
I made mention of him for Robin's sake.
Thank you.
But he did flash a little bit in the spring.
Barrett Liebentritt from Notre Dame, the transfer they brought in, he played for the Irish as a fullback. He played on special teams, Omaha Scut product. He's a guy to watch. Caden Becker,
tight end?
Fullback.
Oh, fullback.
Tight end. They're kind of the same thing. I mean, they're interchangeable.
Now you're confusing me, Sean.
We're kind of in the same conversation. The tight ends and the fullbacks are kind of together, I would say. But that's a new wild card name, as is Caden Becker, to kind of keep your eyes on. But
Trevor Ruth, too.
Trevor
UNK
Ruth,
transfer.
Former, he's related to the Makovics, by the way.
Wow.
But offensive line guys, we've hit on this a bunch already on Nebraska's O-line.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time to go in all the weeds on this, but my biggest question is Corcoran. Like, where does he land? What's his role? And a lot of it is contingent on Prohaska at left tackle, Bryce Benhart at right tackle. How does that puzzle come together?
Yeah, I mean, Teddy Prohaska, Donovan in his radio interview the other day just said flat out he's ready to go. So I think Teddy, see that projected fall camp depth chart there, Teddy left tackle. That's what I think you're looking at. Now, if you're Turner Corcoran, my concern would be, okay, I'm your backup left tackle, and I might be your backup. I could be a backup at guard too. Am I just a backup? I don't know, Sean. I don't know what Turner Corcoran's role would be. Ethan Piper looks like your left guard, right? Ben Scott, we know, is the center. Right guard looks like Noradine Nuili, and right tackle looks like Bryce Benhart. So where is Corcoran? Is he your sort of utility guy? Your first up?
I think that's an important role to have, because when was the last time Nebraska had 5 guys over the course of the season? So odds are you're going to play. And if you can play, remember, he was repping at center at some point too. So he can play all center. 5 spots on the offensive line. And having a guy like that is invaluable. Yeah, that just for depth.
That might be what you're looking at with him, because they're not bad depth wise, but they're a little short at a couple spots. I mean, at center, if take Corcoran out of the discussion at center, is it Justin Evans Jenkins? Is that your backup?
Or I think it would be a moving of Corcoran or somebody to center.
Okay, that's Piper work at center a little bit.
Piper could work at center. Yeah,
Nuili could. I mean, there's a lot of guys.
Yeah, Nuili
that have the.
Where's Lutovsky fit?
Guard. He's strictly guard.
Still backup guard. Good backup though.
And they tried to go with him last year, and then they went back to Piper. It felt like, and then with Nuri back, it makes a difference having him back. I mean, they've got about 7 guys that can play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a matter of how Donovan wants to rotate and play those 7 guys.
Lutovsky is a guy that if he walked in here and you shook his hand, you'd say, "Oh boy."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's ready to play.
And he's
physically.
lean.
Yeah, we were talking about him last summer. I remember.
Oh, he's a
and
mountain.
He looked like how you would want an interior offensive lineman in the Big Ten to look like.
Yeah, and he looks a little crazy too, which is another
I'm talking
trait.
about. Yeah, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like you're a little nervous around him. He's a great guy. I mean, but like he has that look.
Yeah, he's got the crazy eyes.
He never ate, like his body, if you look at it, it's really cut and lean. Growing up, he never had fast food. I think his mom was like some sort of nutritionist. And so he ate healthy. Just like, the Rude's mom was a nutritionist. And those, they were fed right growing up. And nutrition is a huge part of, how you develop your body, especially at a young age. And I mean, he's a guy that has a great frame. It's a matter of can he play? But yeah, the O-line and how that puzzle comes together will be a big question. When we come back on the show, we're going to take questions in the mailbag as Abby Barmore will join us next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. Let's welcome in Abby Barmore. But before we get to that, we even have a mailbag question on this, Abby. But this segment of the program, Steve Sipple, is brought to you by
Larson Motors. Here's the deal. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships, and this is the key, with all the major brands in one location. You could spend half a day on the lot. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram has never been easier. So start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
And what was there was a mailbag question related to Larson?
Well, yes, of course, we always have the hard-hitting questions. So, Sipple, when are you going to get your midlife crisis Jeep?
Why is there an assumption I'm having a midlife crisis?
Well, because you have a motorcycle, you were looking at boats, and you're talking about Jeeps.
Just built into the discussion, I'm having some sort of crisis.
And you're going to the lake.
It's just assumed.
I see him all the time, and every time I see him, like a Rubicon, I like the look of it.
Well, I'm guessing the ownership of Larson, they're thinking about, we got to get Sipple in a Jeep.
Yeah, I'm thinking in color. I like white and black. A lot of people do. I've noticed that. A lot of cars, white, a lot of white and black.
Would you be a top off in the summer guy?
No.
Top off, shirt off.
No, that's full.
Doors.
Then
rip the doors off.
No, then you see dudes like sticking one leg out the side. Come on. No, I'm not doing that. Taking the doors off.
You'll dial it back a little bit.
Yeah.
What's the point of getting a Jeep if you don't take the top off?
Come on.
We'll just go on a road.
57 years old.
We'll drive to like Iowa City that way or something.
Yeah.
Make him drive the Jeep.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, back on the track here. What do you got in the mailbag, Abby?
Okay. Who are your way too early predictions for Nebraska's offensive and defensive MVPs?
I mean, Jeff Sims, just based on the position, makes the most sense.
The volume that he's going to be in that offense.
Yeah. Defense.
MJ Sherman.
Ooh, good one. I'll go Reimer.
Okay.
Because I think he's going to get a lot of tackles.
Well, he's led them in tackles 2 straight years by a long ways.
Yeah.
Even missing 2 games last year.
I think he's going to do what you think he could do and put his name towards the top of the record books.
Well, if he has the sort of year that he's had the last 2, he'll easily become Nebraska's all-time 3rd leading tackler behind Barrett Ruud and Jerry Murtaugh. If he has a spectacular season, if he gets 100 tackles, he'll be number 2. I believe he'll pass Murtaugh.
So I'll go him.
So yeah, that's pretty good. And it's not like he has benefited that much from COVID. His freshman year, he had 11 tackles. So this is basically, he'll do it over a kind of a conventional time period. Offensive, if it's not Sims, Kemp would be the guy I would go to.
Not
next.
Grant.
No, I'd go Kemp because you know what's going to happen. They're going to use a short passing game a lot, and Kemp's going to be targeted a lot. And if he breaks some tackles, gets loose, he could have a pretty dynamic year.
Yeah,
so I'd go Kemp.
With those running backs too, I don't know if any of them are going to get the volume to be in that discussion. I think the share is going to limit the numbers they're going to put up.
Defense, Sherman, I mean, it's hard to pick linebackers because we don't know exactly who they're going to be and how they're going to be used. So it's God. If you're a Nebraska fan, you hope Ty Robinson's their MVP. I mean, you want one of those linemen to rise up and become. I don't want to say the word dominant, but close.
Look like a pro.
Yeah, look like a pro. Look like an NFL player.
All right, Abby, what's next?
Okay, if you could bring back one dormant rivalry for Nebraska, who would it be and why?
Should we take Oklahoma out of it because that's like the obvious
I got one. Go ahead, you guys. You won't pick the one I'm thinking.
I already know what you're going to pick.
I'd like to see Nebraska play Texas.
Okay, yeah, it'd be fun.
I mean, just there was a lot of. I mean, Texas is 9-1 against Nebraska in the Big 12 era.
God,
9-1. The only win
God
came
Almighty
in the '97 conference title game,
and they slaughtered them. Right.
And of those 10 games, Nebraska was favored probably in 7 of them, maybe 8. I mean,
how about the red out around the world game?
Oh,
when they made the red out and Texas somehow came in and beat those teams.
Was that 2010?
Yeah, and that Texas team was a 2-touchdown dog.
That was a bad Texas team.
Yeah. Robin, who's yours?
So are we limiting it strictly to conference? Like Big 8, Big 12?
No, I think
Anybody, dude.
Yeah.
Miami.
Okay. That's a good one. I wasn't going to pick that one.
Miami.
Limited, I mean, just to rekindle those Orange Bowl.
Just do like a 2-game swap.
Well, do you remember what it
home.
felt like in what that game felt like when Miami was
yes,
here?
it was awesome.
What year was that, guys?
2014.
What was
and
that?
they went
like?
there in 15, right?
Yeah, they went there in 15.
What was that scene like in Memorial Stadium?
Incredible.
A hell of a lot better than the one that was in Miami. When
Yeah.
we were in Miami, they were trying to fire Al Golden.
Somebody had a plane, remember? And
That
they had
said
the
fire Al Golden over
banner
the
on the
stadium.
plane.
And it was hotter than hell.
Mhm.
It was a 3:30 game
Brutal.
in September in Miami.
That sun was unbelievable.
That game against Miami here was the Amir Abdullah show.
Yes.
And
And Randy Gregory.
late in that game, Gregory and Malik Collins made a huge play.
Yes.
Fourth down. On fourth down, I'd take Kansas State.
Yeah.
I'd take Kansas
That'd be
State.
my second pick.
Yeah, I'd take Kansas State because what Chris Kleiman's doing down there right now. He's building a little bit of a monster down there, and I think it'd be fun if Rule gets this going. If they're consistently 2 top 20 teams, if Rule could get that going, how fun would that be to get that thing going?
Don't you think Iowa will go after him if the Iowa
Yes.
job opens? Like,
Yes.
that's the guy.
100%.
They have to.
And he won't go.
He'll stay.
He'll stay at Kansas State.
It's got a good thing going.
Yep.
There's a lot of rumblings, even like Matt Campbell would be a target.
Hey guys, how fun
someday.
would that be for us if it got going with Kansas State? We just drive. We're just driving down
That's
Manhattan.
one of the biggest reasons why I would say that day trip.
Oh, it's fun.
idea.
It's 2 hours from Lincoln.
Super fun.
11 a.m. kickoff. You leave in the morning.
Yeah. It's fun.
Oh, we did some one-dayers. Like,
Yeah.
That was a fun atmosphere there too.
Oh, yeah.
Not big of a stadium, but it was fun.
what's next?
Okay,
Abby?
our next one. If you could bring back a former Nebraska assistant coach from last season's staff, who would it be?
And I want to preface, we're not knocking Matt Rule's staff here. We're just,
Yeah, that's a tough one for us right now.
I don't want to like act like I'm saying there's a guy on this staff that shouldn't be on, because these are all qualified guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if there's one that would make sense to me, it would be Sean Beckton. I think you look at him as a tight ends coach. He's really good. I think he's a great leader of young men. He's a great recruiter in Florida and Georgia. So he's a guy that when you look at it, like highly qualified tight ends coach, and did a lot of, I mean, you can't really be critical of anything he did as a coach at Nebraska.
Yeah, you can't be critical of any of these guys right now, in my opinion.
No.
I've said consistently with the Rule staff that
Mickey at the time, when it was like going on, like made sense, but obviously that changed as the story changed.
what I've been saying is you got to give these guys a year or two before you really judge them. That said, Barrett Ruud's an excellent linebackers coach, and I think he'd look good on this staff. Barrett's a great technician. I mean, you talk about Reimer. Now Barrett, his room was a little light, a little light on talent, but Barrett knows what he's doing. I mean, he's one of the best. I mean, if you talk to coaches that coach with him, he's one of the best technicians around. That's who I'd say.
What about Travis Fisher?
Fisher's good, but man, Cooper's so,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Cooper's so entrenched in the player personnel part of
Right.
it. You know what I'm saying?
be giving up Matt Rule's right hand man.
Yeah.
How about
That ain't
Mike
happening.
Dawson? just with what he did developing that front of Nebraska. I mean, they had a pretty good defensive front.
Mm-hmm.
They developed well.
Dawson's good, but I like Knighton's NFL
experience. And that's a good counter.
I love the Knighton NFL experience. I love it. I love coaches who have 6 years, 7 years, 10 years of playing experience in the NFL, because I know if you guys were a player, if I were a player, that I would listen a little closer to a guy that was drafted. Well, he wasn't. I think he was a third. I don't know what Knighton was, but played in the NFL, made an impact in the NFL.
Won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because we haven't seen these new guys coach.
Right.
All right, Abby,
Okay.
what's next?
What is the status of the Go Big project, and will the football team move in before the season starts?
Great question. It's dicey because everybody can see that construction cam and where it's at, and they got a ways to go. I mean,
They do.
They were pouring concrete just this week. The best case scenario, as we know, was they were going to get access to the locker room and the weight room to start fall camp. That, if I'm just being honest, that seems like a long shot. So what does that mean? Like, do they pause that part of it and wait until the October bye week, or there's a week off to kind of transition it in the season? Because you don't want to rush this. Like, you don't want to like go in or it's like 90% ready. You want it to be 100% ready.
Well, then they won't be in there for a while.
Yeah.
But then the entire project itself, like how much longer will that take to finish?
You sure you don't, Sean? What about just moving into the locker room and have the weight room?
That makes sense.
Would it be ready though?
Yeah.
Like they'll be in. They will be in that locker room in the weight room soon. It's a matter of, will they be in there to start August camp, or will it be later in the fall?
Okay.
And I do think the leadership of Nebraska has to kind of make that decision like this week. I mean, they have to kind of know what's going to happen, because this is a big decision. A lot of moving parts.
It is a big decision. You don't want disruption. As we know now, we're acutely aware of. It's hard to win in the Big Ten. You don't want disruptions like that. I wouldn't move the team in there in October. If they're not moving in August, then I'm saying we're not moving in until after the season.
And there are some early supply chain things that caused delays. There was a coaching change where, maybe Matt Rule wanted to rework a few things here and there.
He
did. But I heard of like one supply chain thing that delayed the project. There was like a 2-month delay because they had to wait on something to come off the ports of LA to get in.
Ports of LA. And
they couldn't get anything done until that thing got dropped in, because it's a big part of. So there are things, obviously, just like with the world right now. I mean, I know getting a garage door could take some people 7-8 months, to the point where if you're building a home, the first thing you did was order your garage doors.
Yeah.
And even then you may not get them. And they had a plywood shut your garage door in order for the bank to allow it to close.
And coaches are such creatures of habit too. Like, I can't imagine like you're in the thick of it in the middle of a season and all of a sudden, all right, everybody pack up. We're moving over to this new facility that we have never been in before. Like, I just don't think that happens. I think that you'd be forcing the issue at that point.
Final question.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about road trips, and you got one coming up soon. So what work, like road trip or flight, has turned out to be the worst or the most chaotic one?
Oh, God. You guys,
I know you've been on a lot of them.
Well, last year's Big Ten Media Days,
that's got to be up there,
was a disaster, all accounts. I wasn't working with you guys yet. I mean, that was its own disaster that we had to kind of manage our way through.
That aside,
but B, our flights in Charlotte, we land in Charlotte, normal, everything's on time. We all go to the bathroom, we come out. Our flight from Charlotte to Indy's canceled. Just not postponed.
It was late enough. There was no other flight going out.
So everyone in the whole airport's reacting the same way. On the fly, I get on the phone, call Delta or American, and I'm like, "What's close to Indy? What's close to?" I see Cincinnati's close, Louisville's close. So like, can we get to one of these places? And we got our flights moved from Charlotte to Cincinnati, but then we had to rent a car in Cincinnati when we landed, and then drive into Indy and get it to the hotel at like 2 a.m, maybe even later than 2.
And it was a 8 a.m. wake up call, right?
Well, 8 a.m. start time, not a wake up call.
Because Frost was the first one, right?
Yeah.
He started before it actually started.
That was wonderful.
And they were out of car. Like the place I rented a car was closed. We had to cancel. And then there was only one option, and all they had were pickup trucks. And so the four of us, Greg Peterson as well, we squeezed into a pickup truck and got to Indy. And
it was not a good. That was not good.
Then coming home,
yeah. There was
we were on Delta.
Yeah, and there's a coil on smoking.
Smoke starts coming into the cabin.
Yeah, out of the vents as we're on the tarmac.
Smoke, right? The coils, I guess, were
in the fire department
burning plastic.
And so our flight got canceled or delayed, and then we were gonna have to stay overnight in Minneapolis. So we just rented a minivan and drove back.
Stayed in Peoria, got into Peoria, Illinois that night.
That was beautiful.
The cops were, remember when we pulled up, there was another incident going on at the nightclub in the hotel, and they were like literally like cops. Like, I'm like, oh, they knew Sipple's coming. Gosh darn it.
Sip got thrown into the fire on that one. Welcome to the party.
Peoria.
This ain't the Journal Star anymore.
I'm trying to think if that has to be up there though. That one.
Yeah, I mean, from start to finish, that was by far the worst trip we've ever had. We've had very good luck, more often than not, with our travel.
Yeah,
like I can't imagine any like huge disasters.
I mean, we've managed to like stay in Penn State like kings.
The Gator Bowl or whatever.
Oh yeah, Gator Bowl
or Capital One Bowl.
No, Gator Bowl, Jacksonville.
We sat at the airport all day, basically waiting for a flight, and it kept getting postponed because there was weather in Chicago.
No, it was a Southwest Airlines computer issue or weather issue that canceled everything in Chicago.
That's right. So anyways, out of Chicago. And we're just waiting, and it just keeps saying delayed until it's like to the point where it's like evening. And we're like, this isn't going to happen. And so there was no other flights, and their next flight available was like days.
But we got on the plane.
Are we talking Joe Gans right now, Gator Bowl?
No, we're talking Tommy Armstrong, Quincy and Nunn. 99-yard touchdown pass.
Georgia Gator Bowl.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway,
we got on the plane, and the plane was on the runway, and we're like, all right, we're at least going to get to Chicago. We'll be closer to home. And then they took the plane back.
It's brutal.
And I just told Rob, and I go, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the first guy off.
And he did.
And I'm going to sprint to the gate because every one of these people on this plane are going to be freaking sprinting up to the gate.
Power move by Sean.
Yeah, big time.
And I was the first guy up, and they go, yeah, we can't get you out of here for like 4 days. And I'm like, well, that ain't going to work.
No.
So we somehow got our rental car back, which was like a Chevy Suburban. It was a sweet ride. And we drove all the way back.
Straight shot.
From
20 some hours.
Jacksonville. 20 hours, 18, 20.
Yeah.
And we were just like, all right, here's the deal. Everyone's going to do a 3-hour shift, and it's a rotating wheel.
I did the first one. I got us through Atlanta, which was fine because it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no traffic. Then we turned it over to Greg, GP. So he used to live in Tennessee, in Nashville for a long time. So he knows the mountains and how windy it gets. So, I mean, he was going like, I don't know how fast, but just like when this Suburban just darting around these corners, pitch black. And I'm glad that he was the one that handled that stretch.
Young Dan Hoppen earned his man stripes. So, I mean,
he did.
I don't know.
He grew up that day.
I mean, he wasn't used to a late. I mean, it's a grind.
It was a grind.
When you work,
he's going through St. Louis at like rush hour traffic.
I didn't know you guys did that. I had no idea you did that.
We pulled back into Lincoln around 5 o'clock in the evening.
God, that's awful.
So that would be up there.
Yeah,
that's got to be up there. I've never had anything like that.
Well, you guys would drive so many road games, so you wouldn't fly as much. So it'd be a little bit more controllable.
Yeah. Always fun hearing flight stories.
So those are our two, and Robin and I have traveled together since 2008. So I guess we're fairly lucky.
Yeah, I'm going to say if we've had 2 major incidents and that many trips, I'll take it.
All right. When we come back, we'll close the show with some Nebraska basketball talk. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. It was fun reminiscing in the mailbag, which is always one of our favorite segments on the show. But let's close up with some basketball talk with Robin Washett. Robin, the non-conference schedule.
Not officially released, but we know it.
Close to it.
Yeah. So on Wednesday, they officially announced what they are calling the Cornhusker Classic. It's a 3-game extended multi-team event, or MTE, that is taking place from November 13th through November 22nd. And so Nebraska is going to play home games against Ryder, Stony Brook, and Duquesne over that span. And then Stony Brook, Duquesne, and Ryder are going to play each other over a series of games over that week as well. So this is different from like the golden window and the battle in the vault. The battle in the vault was a exception for season tickets, and so you had to pay extra to go to that. That's not the case. These are regular home games, part of the season ticket package. They don't. I know they don't do much as far as the fan appeal, but Duquesne's good. Like they're a team that I can't remember. They were close to 20 wins last year, and they bring everybody back.
Okay.
And so they're going to be. If you're going to look at the non-con as a team that could potentially be a problem, I would put them right up towards the top. And so, like I said, nothing officially has been announced outside of the Oregon State game on November 18th, Saturday in Sioux Falls, and then the Creighton game on December 3rd in Lincoln. But through reporting and whatnot, basically been able to put together the whole non-con, 11 games, and it's a much more manageable approach from at least last year, where they played 5 home games in the non-con. They have 9 this year. They had, what was it? They had 27 of their 31 games, including the conference schedule, against high major competition. Only Kansas State and Creighton and Oregon State are
this year
are not high major non-con schedule. So that's 4 less high major opponents on your schedule, and so it's a schedule that wasn't creative to get season ticket sales going. It's a schedule that is designed to win and build early conference momentum. Their first 5 games are going to be at home, or at least their first 3, and then they go to the Pentagon, which, if you remember back in 2018, the last time they played there in Sioux Falls, that was like a 90-10 split as far as Nebraska fans and Oklahoma State. So it's a neutral site game, but it's a home game.
You think Oregon State's going to pile them in there?
I don't think so.
Well, it's the same day as Nebraska-Wisconsin football.
Yeah,
in
that's
Madison.
unfortunate.
So, Robin, if it is an 11 a.m. game for football, and that's a night game, theoretically, you could get a car and haul over to Madison.
Yeah, it's a long drive. I got to time it out, but we'll see.
Or we'll be covering that from some sort of Wisconsin establishment.
Yeah, we'll make it happen either way. So, really, besides playing Kansas State, that's the only true road game is Kansas State,
Bramlage,
and down in Bramlage. This is the 3rd game of a 3-game series and
they'll be good
with the Wildcats. Yeah, they lost probably their 3 best players from last year, but Jerome Tang is an elite recruiter, so they'll be good. And then Creighton's borderline top 10, top 15 team, and then you get another high major with Oregon State. So I mean, there's at least some level of challenge, but it's not going to be anything where they're going to make or break their NCAA tournament off this non-con. This thing was designed to get wins, and right now, I would say they will be favored in at least 9 of their 11 non-conference games. So,
Fred needs some wins.
Yes, he does. I mean, that's what hurt him last year.
Right.
Like the overall body of work was good enough to be a tournament team. They just didn't have the wins, and they lost in the non-con. These lopsided losses at St. John's and those types that skewed their RPI and KenPom rating that did them no services. So now you're going to stockpile a bunch of big wins. And as we've seen, strength of the schedule is a low-level priority when it comes to tournament selection.
That's the key, Rob.
Don't look at it like you got to play a bunch of Final Four teams. You just got to get wins, and you got to do well in conference, and you got to find a way to win away from your home arena.
You got to schedule like Bill Snyder did at Kansas State football. Remember his non-conference scheduling? He purposely scheduled the 4 worst teams every year just to get wins and build confidence. That's what Mark Mangino did at Kansas, and they got going. I mean, that's where Nebraska basketball is. They can't overschedule.
Yeah, and I mean, when was the last time, especially under Fred Hoiberg, they had early season momentum? I mean, losing their 2nd or 3rd game to Western Illinois or whatever it may be.
They haven't had it.
So, I mean, they have to avoid that. I mean, I've looked at games in previous years saying, oh, they're going to win that game, and they lose. So they open with Lindenwood on November 6th. And from then on, they got to take care of business.
All right, make sure you download and follow and subscribe to us here on the Husker Online YouTube page. Also, find us anywhere you can find podcasts. Make sure you check out HuskerOnline.com. Great time to check us out with fall camp right around the corner.